Welcome to the deep dive. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we are looking at something that proves just how much raw psychological power you can pack into 60 seconds of television.
Yeah, 60 seconds is really all it took.
Right. We are unpacking a legendary piece of political media. It's a 1984 campaign commercial officially titled Prouder, Stronger, Better. But you, along with basically the rest of the world, probably know it simply as Morning in America.
It really stands as the undisputed gold standard for a very specific kind of political messaging.
It does. And our source today is a detailed Wikipedia article that breaks down the ad's creation, the content, and its immense cultural resonance.
And our mission today for you listening is to really take this iconic ad apart, like frame by frame, line by line. We want to understand how a single one-minute commercial managed to define political optimism for decades.
Exactly. We're going to examine how it wielded tone as a literal weapon and how its echoes are still shaping modern elections and even pop culture today.
But before we get into the mechanics of all this, we need to make something explicitly clear to you listening.
Yes, very important. We are dissecting an inherently political artifact here, one that involves figures and groups spanning the entire spectrum. We're talking Ronald Reagan, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and the Lincoln Project.
So because of that, we are stating our absolute impartiality up front. We are not taking sides here.
Not at all. We are not endorsing any of the viewpoints, candidates, or political parties we're about to discuss.
Right. Our role is strictly to report on and analyze the rhetorical strategies and historical facts exactly as they appear in the source text.
We are looking at the architecture of the message, not voting on the platform. We're just acting as your guides through the mechanics of persuasion, looking at how these political entities constructed their arguments.
Spot on. So let's just jump right into that architecture.
Let's do it. If you've ever studied advertising or political history, or really just absorbed American pop culture, you know the opening line of this commercial. It's Morning Again in America.
Yeah, that line. It immediately paints this vivid picture of everyday Americans waking up, getting ready, commuting to work.
It does, and the dual function of that single phrase is doing an immense amount of heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely. On the surface, it's just a literal description of the visuals. You see these sun-drenched early morning shots playing on the screen.
But beneath that, it operates as this remarkably potent metaphor for national renewal.
Right. Morning implies that a dark night is finally over. The sun is coming up, the slate is wiped clean, a fresh start is here.
And to really grasp the weight of that metaphor, you have to look at the baseline it was reacting to.
Yeah, the historical context.
Exactly. The ad wasn't just selling a generic sunny day. It was selling an exit strategy from the late 1970s and early 1980s.
Which was an era defined by severe economic malaise, the energy crisis, and just a general sense of national exhaustion.
That context is everything. The genius of Prouder, Stronger, Better is that it doesn't just rely on warm, fuzzy feelings to contrast with that previous darkness.
It actually grounds its emotional metaphor in highly specific, tangible data.
Right. The script explicitly tells the viewer that interest rates are at about half of their 1980 record highs.
And it mentions inflation is at less than half of what it was 4 years prior.
And they pair those macroeconomic stats with hyper-specific microeconomic visuals. The voiceover states that exactly that day, nearly 2,000 families will buy new homes.
Which was more than at any time in the past 4 years.
Yeah, and then it adds that very afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will get married.
I mean, think about the psychological weight of those two specific metrics.
Yeah.
Buying a home and getting married.
Huge life events.
Right. In a period of high inflation and economic instability, people feel entirely out of control of their financial destinies. They put their lives on hold.
They don't buy houses. They wait to get married.
Exactly. So by focusing on mortgages and weddings, which are the ultimate acts of long-term planning and optimism, the ad isn't just selling an economic recovery under Ronald Reagan.
It's selling the return of predictability to American life.
Right.
It's telling the voter that it is safe to plan for the future again.
It builds up all this incredible momentum. You have the lowering inflation, the weddings, the new homes, the sun literally rising.
And then, at the very peak of that optimism, the script executes this brilliantly sharp pivot.
Yes, the pivot is so good. It asks voters directly why they would ever want to return to where they were less than 4 short years ago.
It's a textbook rhetorical trap.
It completely is. It takes the positive feelings generated by the word morning and essentially positions the pre-Reagan policies of the Democrats, not just as a competing political philosophy, but as a literal step backward into the dark.
The framing is just masterful. The choice isn't presented as Reagan versus his Democratic opponent.
Right, Walter Mondale isn't even the point. The choice is framed as moving forward into the morning versus retreating into the night.
And the visual language carrying that message is just as deliberate. You watch this ad, and it feels like a sweeping cross-country documentary of the American dream.
You see picket fences, bustling main streets, people loading up trucks, folks heading to the factory.
You would completely assume it took a massive multi-state production to capture that everywhere USA feeling.
But here is the crazy behind-the-scenes trivia from the source. They didn't even leave California.
I love this detail.
Yeah, the director, John Pitka, and the art director, Bernie Vangren, shot the entire supposedly national montage in one single town, Petaluma, California.
They managed to distill the entire visual identity of the American working class into a few blocks of Sonoma County.
It proves you don't need a 50-state shoot if your visual shorthand is strong enough.
But visual shorthand only gets you halfway there. You can have the perfect script, the perfect economic stats, and the perfect sun-drenched Petaluma visuals.
But if the delivery feels like a politician lecturing you, the illusion shatters.
Exactly. The true alchemy of this ad comes from the messenger, Hal Riney.
Hal Riney was an advertising executive who not only wrote the ad, but narrated it himself.
And he was clearly tapping into something resonant, because he was also the creative mind and voice behind other massive Reagan ads from that era, like America's Back and the famous Bear in the Woods commercial.
Riney possessed this incredibly rich, avuncular delivery. When you listen to the audio, it doesn't sound like a broadcaster or a political operative.
No, not at all. It sounds like your favorite uncle sitting across the kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee, calmly giving you some good news about the neighborhood.
That tone was a radical departure from the norm. Think about what the Republican political strategist Dan Schnur pointed out regarding Riney's technique.
Yeah, Schnur noted that the vast majority of political advertising historically hits viewers over the head.
It's loud, it's aggressive, and it's confrontational by design.
But Riney figured out how to make an equally devastating political point, but in a less confrontational and a more soothing manner.
It's a masterclass in lowering the listener's defenses. When someone is shouting at you through a television screen, your psychological guard immediately goes up. You brace for the spin.
But when someone speaks to you in a calm, optimistic whisper, telling you that things are getting better and the night is over, you naturally lean in.
You want to believe the voice.
Yeah.
The soothing tone itself becomes the primary engine of persuasion.
And there is a profound lesson in that for you listening right now, regardless of your field.
Absolutely. Whether you are pitching a client in a boardroom, navigating a tense negotiation, or just trying to persuade a partner at home.
Our default assumption is often that we need to project more volume to project more authority.
But Riney proved that sometimes a calm, optimistic whisper completely disarms the room in a way an aggressive shout never could.
That specific alchemy of Riney's voice, the pinpoint statistics, and the Petaluma visuals created a cultural template.
And it is a template that politicians across the spectrum have been desperately trying to reverse engineer ever since 1984.
So let's look at how that played out in the 2016 presidential election, because it felt like half the field was trying to bottle that specific magic.
Yeah, they were chasing the magic hard. You had Republican candidate Marco Rubio explicitly invoking the legacy by releasing a campaign ad literally titled, "Morning Again in America."
Rubio's campaign attempted to recreate the exact visual playbook. They assembled a montage of everyday American life in cities and suburbs.
Clearly aiming for that same everywhere USA emotional resonance that Pitka captured in Petaluma.
Except they had a rather catastrophic lapse in quality control.
Oh man, the gaffe.
The Rubio campaign drew immense criticism because the very opening, establishing shot of their great American montage wasn't filmed in America at all.
It was stock footage of the Vancouver, British Columbia skyline in Canada.
It's a brutal, unforced error when your entire rhetorical premise hinges on evoking domestic national pride.
But Rubio was hardly alone in trying to harness the phrase in 2016. Ted Cruz wove the concept into the very fabric of his stump speeches.
He practically treated the concept of morning in America as an inevitable event that he was personally ushering in. He was like a hype man for the sunrise.
Right. At the 2014 Conservative Political Action Conference, he told the crowd, "We can bring back morning in America."
And he hammered it again during a South Carolina primary speech.
He even used it as his definitive victory cry. After winning the Republican caucus in Iowa, Cruz stood on stage and declared, "Morning is coming."
He was actively trying to cast himself as the rising sun, using the 1984 ad as a shorthand to signal a return to Reagan-era conservative principles.
But then you see the exact same 1984 imagery get completely inverted by the opposition.
Yes, the flip. During the 2016 Democratic National Convention, Hillary Clinton weaponized the concept against Donald Trump during her nomination acceptance speech.
This is a brilliant piece of rhetorical judo. Clinton told the convention crowd that Trump had taken the Republican Party a long way from morning in America to what she termed midnight in America.
She argued that his platform was fundamentally built on making people fear the future and fear each other.
The mechanics of that attack are fascinating because she isn't just criticizing her opponent's policies.
By explicitly referencing the ad, she is using the most sacred, beloved text of the modern Republican Party to indict its current nominee.
It demonstrates that the phrase had entirely transcended its original context. It was no longer just a campaign slogan.
It had become the universal American shorthand for political optimism.
And by establishing morning as the ultimate ideal, Clinton successfully positioned her Midnight in America concept as the ultimate political dread.
That concept of dread takes us directly into the 2020 election cycle, where the legacy of the ad took an even darker, much more visceral twist.
Yeah, the Lincoln Project released an ad that flipped the entire optimistic script by changing a single letter.
They spelled it MOURNING in America, mourning as in grief and loss.
The Lincoln Project ad is a surgical deconstruction of the original, where the Hal Riney ad used metrics of weddings and home ownership to prove that life was getting better. The 2020 ad reversed the polarity.
It focused heavily on the mounting death toll from the COVID-19 pandemic.
And what the ad framed as the debatable inaction of President Donald Trump's administration.
They didn't just drop a national broadcast and hope for the best either. They executed a highly targeted, state-by-state strategy to maximize the damage.
They produced customized versions titled Morning in Iowa, Morning in Florida, Morning in Pennsylvania, and Morning in Ohio.
They even went after the ideological core with a version titled Morning in Republican Party, which explicitly lamented the direction of the conservative movement.
The emotional devastation of that ad campaign relies entirely on the viewer's cultural memory. The parody only lands its punch because the wholesome, soothing rhythm of the original is so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness.
When you hear that familiar cadence deliver statistics of death rather than statistics of new homes, the cognitive dissonance is incredibly jarring.
And that cognitive dissonance isn't just a political weapon either. It turns out to be a master key for psychological horror in pop culture.
Yes, the entertainment industry. Entertainment executives understand the hardwired nature of this ad just as well as political strategists do.
Which became incredibly apparent during Super Bowl 53.
The Super Bowl is the pinnacle of American advertising real estate. It's the one moment of the year where the commercials are scrutinized with the same intensity as the broadcast itself.
And Hulu utilized that massive cultural megaphone to debut a trailer for the third season of their hit series, The Handmaid's Tale.
Anyone familiar with The Handmaid's Tale knows it deals with the bleak, totalitarian dread of the Republic of Gilead.
You expect fire, oppression, and dystopian terror right out of the gate. But Hulu pulled off a spectacular bait and switch.
The trailer was meticulously engineered to mimic the 1984 Morning in America ad. It utilized an incredibly similar, soothing voiceover narration.
The initial visuals were bright, calm, and reassuring, focusing specifically on women and newborn children.
For those first few seconds, the Super Bowl audience likely assumed they were watching a genuine, saccharine political ad, or maybe a high-end life insurance commercial.
It lulls you into this false sense of security using that exact Hal Riney rhythm.
And then, without warning, the soothing narration and the sun-drenched visuals are violently interrupted.
The screen erupts into scenes of Gilead, fire, totalitarian brutality, and women forced into sexual slavery. It is a massive, jarring whiplash.
The trailer then delivers its knockout punch. It concludes with the lead character, June Osborne, staring directly into the camera
and stating flatly, "Wake up, America, morning's over."
It's an incredibly effective piece of marketing. But when you pull back and look at the broader implications, it forces you to ask why the showrunners chose this specific 1984 campaign ad to parody.
Out of all the political media produced over the last 40 years, why did this one serve as the vehicle for dystopian horror?
Well, the answer really synthesizes why this matters to you listening, because it proves the sheer unyielding durability of the ad's tone.
The specific brand of wholesome optimism that Hal Riney and John Pitka manufactured is so universally recognizable.
It's hardwired into the American cultural psyche.
Right, it can be instantly identified by viewers more than 3 decades later. The terror of the Hulu trailer doesn't just come from the imagery of Gilead.
The terror is generated by the violation of that safe, soothing morning in America feeling. By corrupting something so inherently trusted, the horror hits infinitely harder.
It really puts the life cycle of this single piece of media into perspective.
We started in a sunny, fictionalized version of Petaluma, California, with a simple 60-second commercial trying to convince voters that interest rates were moving in the right direction.
And over 4 decades, it evolved into the undisputed gold standard for political messaging.
A rhetorical weapon for both the left and the right to bludgeon each other with.
And finally, a pop culture touchstone capable of selling dystopian fiction on the biggest advertising stage in the world.
It demonstrates that when a message is delivered with the exact right tone and perfectly timed to intersect with a nation's emotional needs, it ceases to be just an advertisement.
It breaks free of its original context and becomes a permanent fixture in the cultural vocabulary.
It absolutely does. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
We've spent a lot of time breaking down how effective this unifying image of morning in America was, but it's crucial to remember the environment it was deployed in.
Hal Riney created that message in an era dominated by a monoculture. 3 major TV networks, where a massive portion of the country sat down and watched the exact same broadcasts at the exact same time.
They shared a singular cultural reality, which forces us to look at our current reality.
We now live in a deeply fragmented media landscape, driven by highly personalized, often isolating digital algorithms that feed us custom-tailored realities.
Given that fracture, is it even mechanically possible to create a universally resonant Morning in America message today? Or has our algorithmic digital landscape made that kind of shared national optimism obsolete?
Definitely something to consider the next time a perfectly polished political ad slides into your social media feed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.